Sometimes when it feels like the world is absolutely going crazy, which it feels like right now, just being able to spend a couple of days with your yarny friends really can reset everything for you a little bit. That's what happened to me. I just got back to Flock. We're going to talk all about it on the other side. Hello and welcome to, I think, episode 68 of Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a Craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I am a knitter, a crocheter, and sometimes designer, and every so often, I usually say every couple weeks, but that may change. So every so often, I come to this little corner of YouTube to share what I've been working on and to give you all some ideas on how you can take your love of crafting and do a little bit of good in the world with it. I hope you're well. You can find me on the social medias as Gary Knits over on Blue Sky, and on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides. Before I forget, here is a QR code that will take you to the show notes, where I will link to each and everything that I mention today, from dyers and their yarns to patterns to craftivism ideas. So if you are watching this not on your mobile device, you can just take a picture of that. It will take you right to the Google Doc where all of those links live. They're also down below. As I said, I hope you are well. It is Wednesday, August 13th, as I'm filming this. I was, as I mentioned, at Flock up in Seattle last weekend. Had a fantastic time. We're going to talk all about that. We're going to do things in a little bit of a different order today, since that is the main focus. And because I'm still only working on 2 projects, I can show you the progress I've made, but there's not much new to show on the knitting stuff, so we're going to push that back a little bit. But before we get into Flock and what happened up in Seattle, just a little update on what else has been going on since last we spoke 2 weeks ago. Sorry, I've got a lot of props today, so there's things in all sorts of places. I'm trying to figure out how to best manage this situation, and I've got a very sheddy dog who is very interested in trying to get up on the couch and get into all the yarn. Anyway, last couple weeks, I had a work-related trip up to San Francisco, which also allowed me to hang out with one of my best friends for a dinner and the better part of a day, which was really awesome. And then came back home, turned right around and went up to Flock. Prior to the San Francisco trip, I had a rehearsal at the Hollywood Bowl where I was able to sit outside and knit and listen to a Mendelssohn violin concerto, which was fantastic. And then right after I got back from Flock, in fact, the reason I had to only spend one day at Flock is I had to get back to another for a Hollywood Bowl concert. We went on this last weekend to see King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. It was a band we were not familiar with prior to finding out that they were playing as part of our subscription. Australian band, rock and roll, but very prolific. I think they've done like 27 albums in like 10 years. And each album seems to be different, from like psychedelic to electronic to folk to thrash metal to straight up kind of garage rock and roll. They were doing the whole show with an orchestra, which was really cool. The first half of the show was their latest album, which we had spent some time with. I really enjoyed. And the second half seemed to be a mix, but definitely leaned a little bit more. There was some more chill stuff, but leaned a little bit heavier into the metal side of things. Anyway, this band, who we did not know, apparently has quite a global following. Not, I think, quite at like the Grateful Dead level, but there are definitely people who follow this band around, including the gentleman who was sitting right next to us, who, when we first arrived, was like, "Do you know what you're getting into?" And we're like, "Yeah, we've listened to a little bit of the music leading up to this." And he was like, "Welcome to the family." And it was just a very fun crowd because everyone was really into it. But you could definitely tell who the folks with the subscriptions to the series who may not have sought this band out specifically, and the people who definitely sought this band out. But it was a fun show, and they played for like 3 hours and started early, which was great because then we finished early, so we got to go home, and our senior citizen dog, who hates for us to be away, got a little bit of relief from her anxiety. So those are basically the things that have been going on the last couple of weeks, other than Flock, which was the big thing that is going on. And now I'm enjoying, I think, a month of nothing much, just the normal kind of everyday stuff, getting back to my knitting groups, getting back to the Zoom night, linked in the show notes below. If you are looking for a Zoom knitting home or want to come and visit us, we'd love to see you. It's every Tuesday in the evening. The link's down below. It's, usually we get, I don't know, depends, somewhere between 7 and 10 people show up. Most of us are regulars, but we always love to see new faces and let's see what you're working on. So I'm just kind of excited to get back to the normal routine a little bit, with no travel, no house guests, until the middle of September, hopefully finishing up these 2 major projects that I'm working on that we'll talk about in a minute. Before we get into Flock, let's talk about some Craftivism ideas, some of which came out of Flock, because things are bonkers out there right now. The capital of our country is being occupied by the federal government for no particular reason. And I mean, there is a particular reason, because we don't want to find out what's on the Jeffrey Epstein list, but that, and then I'm not sure that it's going to go anywhere, but who knows in this environment. Looks like the Supreme Court is going to possibly take a look again at marriage equality, so that's cool. So there's a lot of going on out there. So here are some things that we can do to try to redirect some of our rage and frustration and stress and whatnot into doing some good out in the world. So the first one, actually, I said it came out of Flock. Well, not really Flock, but on our visit to Seattle, my little group spent a little bit of time at the Acorn Street Shop, which is a local yarn store kind of up north of downtown Seattle, kind of towards the university area. But I was with Nancy from the Knitting in the Northwest podcast, formerly the dyer behind Trilogy Yarn. She's subsequently sold the business, and there's a new dyer for Trilogy Yarn. But she had done a bunch of truck shows at this yarn store in the past, and so she was familiar with it, and so she was around and had a car, and so she drove us up there. Anyway, while we were there, I bought some stuff, which I'll show you, but I noticed at the register there was a little sign that said extra yarn, is great for charity hats, and it had a name of an organization called Feel Good Hats, that I think is run by a woman there locally in Seattle. There was an email address and a phone number. I will link to both of those. I'll link to the email address. I don't know if I would be handing out her phone number, even though it's out there and on display at the shop. But her email address, I couldn't find any like Instagram account, or I didn't check Facebook because I'm basically done with Facebook. But I Googled it. I couldn't find any website or anything for Feel Good Hats, although it says it's a 501c3, and it looks like she donates hats locally to different organizations, food banks and refugee serving organizations and others. I reached out to her. I will provide any additional information I get from her in terms of yarns or weights or any restrictions she has on the donations she takes, and also if she has some information on where to send those. But I always love a good charity hat donation group, and so if you're local to Seattle, that might be a great one for you. Another one that popped into my feed this week is 2 yarn stores in Utah. So one in Salt Lake City, one in Bountiful. One is called Handwork. I'm sorry, I keep looking over here because these are where my notes are. Maybe if I move them closer, I would dump over all this yarn that's sitting in front of me. One is called Handwork Salt Lake City, or Handwork SLC, and the other one is called Seed Stitch. I believe they are in Bountiful, and they are collecting hats through the 11th of October to be given to patients at the Huntsman Cancer Institute there in Utah. The only restrictions that I saw in their Instagram post was soft and washable. So probably superwash or acrylic, and soft and not scratchy, because obviously if these are going to cancer patients who are going through chemo, sometimes that causes very sensitive skin. So 10% off if you want to buy some yarn from them. There is a yarn that they carry called Fanti Aubusson. It was a new French yarn, new to me, but at least on the Handwork SLC website, I assume it's also on the Seed Stitch website, they are running a 10% off discount on that yarn, which looks to be a worsted weight, I think a superwash merino, and no coupon necessary, so you can buy your yarn there. But if you have your own yarn for the hat drive, that's totally fine as well. They just said, again, soft and washable. So that is hats for the Huntsman Cancer Institute in Utah, being run by Handwork SLC and Seed Stitch Shop. I think it's called Seed Stitch Shop in Bountiful. And last but not least, one of you, and thank you all for sending me ideas when things come across your feeds, because I can't see everything. I'm trying to spend less time on Instagram in particular, and so I don't see as many things as I used to. So thank you for anyone who finds something and forwards it to me. But from my friend and one of the viewers here, Dr. Joyce, she connected me and alerted me to several things: a make-along that was going on, as well as a new podcast, which is hysterical and fun, called the Two Sisters Knittin' Talkin' Shit. And it's Marion and Regina. And I don't think they're actually sisters, but they're part of, from what I gathered from watching a little bit of some of their episodes, they were part of a knitting group and somehow put this podcast together. But they have been running for the past couple of months a make-along that they called the 10 for 10 charity make-along. And what they were doing is getting folks to make emotional support chickens, which is the viral pattern from Annette Corsino at my local yarn store, a Knitting Tree LA, available in knit and crochet, and really fun kits available through her store. But Marion and Regina were getting folks to knit up or crochet emotional support chickens and then donate those to Covenant House. And I think they were specifically working at Covenant House in Georgia, but Covenant House is a larger organization that has facilities, shelters in several major cities in North America. I think there's one in Canada and like 5 or 6 or more in the U.S. Having lived in New York for most of my adult life, they've, as far as I know, forever been a fixture there in New York. They provide housing and services to youth and young families and victims of human trafficking. I'm not sure if they provide all those services, like housing, because I know there's a shelter in New York, if they provide all those services in all of their locations. But anyway, Marion and Regina were asking folks to knit up chickens, and I think it went through like the last week or so, but they had a kind of make-along ending Zoom call and announced that they were making this a permanent make-along. So they are continuing, and I'm going to link to their to their YouTube channel, which is a lot of fun, and as well as their Ravelry group, where there's a special feed for this now permanent make along for the sport chickens. In that, there is a link to a document that has the addresses and information for all of the Covenant House locations. So if you have always wanted to make an emotional support chicken like I have, but don't necessarily want it for yourself, or you just love making them, as I know someone in my knitting group has made like 90 of them, I think, and want to donate some of those to kids and the staff at a Covenant House, and bring them some joy, just let them know that someone out there is thinking about them. That is such an amazing gift, your time and your love to give to these folks in need and to the folks who are helping them out. I highly recommend going over to the Ravelry group, checking it out, and making a chicken for someone who could really use some emotional support. So I thought that was a really amazing idea. Definitely now on my radar screen is the Two Sisters Knitting Talking Shit podcast, and maybe, who knows, they will do additional make-alongs for charity going forward, and I will definitely give them a shout out whenever those come across my feed. But definitely go check that out. So let's talk about Flock before we talk about the knitting. A lot to get through. It was such a wild, fun, fast weekend. I flew up Thursday night, so I was meeting some friends from the Tuesday Zoom group. Lynn and Shannon, who's local-ish to the Seattle area, local to the Seattle area, doesn't live in Seattle proper. Lynn, who's coming from the East Coast, and then we were going to meet up with Nancy, who again is from the Knitting in the Northwest podcast, another podcast that you should definitely check out. Nancy, in addition to being a former indie dyer, is a prolific knitter. Always has more whips on her needles than just about anyone I know, but has her podcast with her friend Nettie, who runs a local yarn store up there. I'm going to forget the name of it, but it's something Yarn Barn. And definitely go check them out if you are planning to do the Andrea Mowry Ooey Gooey. I always want to call it Oogie Boogie, but Ooey Gooey sweater, which is the Rhinebeck sweater for this year, because they're going to be doing, starting, I think, like October 18th or so, they're going to be doing a make-along for that. So, and there's going to be prizes and whatnot, and it's going to be done locally, but I know that because Lynn, who was there on the trip, is making it, and they said, oh, you can definitely join this virtually, and just sign up. So I'll put a link down below to the yarn store and to their podcast where that's going on. So if you are going to be ooey gooeying and want to do it with some friends, make some new friends, maybe win some prizes, that's a fun way to do it. So anyway, the three of us the four of us were going to get together, and then surprising the other three, I knew, but they didn't. Stuart, who's the Southpaw knitter, also from the East Coast, had decided to come. So he said, oh, keep it a secret, and we're gonna surprise them. So Friday morning, I got in in the afternoon on Thursday, and Lynn and Shannon and I got together for dinner, and then Friday morning we were all gonna kind of spend the day in Seattle, walking around, checking out some yarn stores. And so Stuart surprised them by showing up that morning. So that was really fun. Last year so this is my third year at Flock. I think each year it's gotten better, but last year when it was downtown, we went out to Bainbridge, Ireland, and went to Le Mercerie and Lamb and Kid, and we didn't feel like we needed to do that again. So Stuart had never been to Seattle, so we went to Yarn Dragon, which is a local yarn store there in Seattle. He has a shop at Pike Place Market, but also then he has his factory store, which is a storefront in Pioneer Square, where you can see all of the work being done, dyeing and hanking and all the yarn, and then he has a little kind of shop with some of his stuff upstairs. So we popped in there. Then we walked along the waterfront. We ended up at Pike Market. Went into his store there, and then there's another yarn store there which I forget the name of, but a really nice selection in what's a super touristy location. But this was a fairly big store for that location. It had a really nice selection, some local sort of Pacific Northwest hand dyers, and then a lot of commercial yarn as well, organized by weight, but really nice. Had a little area to sit and knit as well. So if you're at the Pike Market, I'll put the name down below for that shop. And then we met up with Nancy, who was helping out the Max and Vincent from Les Garçons, because she was helping set up their booth with them at the convention center. And she had her car and said, "Oh, I could take you to this other yarn store. That's my favorite yarn store in Seattle." And we said, "Sure." So we drove out to Acorn Street Street Shop. Sorry. We really nice yarn store, good size, but amazing selection. More knitting books than I've ever seen in a yarn store, but just a great selection of yarn. So we were out there, and Nancy, like I said, Nancy has done some trunk shows there, so knows the owner quite well. And so we hung out there for a little bit. I will show you what I got there. I think I'm gonna talk through Flock, and then we'll go through the acquisitions. But since this is pre-Flock, I'll show you what I got there. The only yarn I bought, and I'm looking for the other thing, here it is. Shannon had been raving about this twice sheared sheep quick gauge ruler thing. And it's gonna be hard to see, but let me see, I'll hold it up to, that's probably gonna make, so it is this acrylic clear gauge ruler that you just, and it has 9, 8.5, 8, 7.5, 7, all the way down up to three stitches per inch, that you just hold over your fabric, and you can get a quick idea of kind of where your gauge is. Now, obviously, I feel compelled at this point to tell you that you need to be knitting more than a 1 inch swatch, and you need to be measuring it over more than just 1 inch. You should then take the ruler side of this thing and measure out 4 inches at least, and count your stitches, because that's not a 100% accurate way to do it, and do it after you've blocked your yarn, etc., etc. But for just a quick, like, where am I? Am I even roughly close to where I want to be or need to be, or here's a fabric I really like, and let me just quickly see what kind of what the gauge is, to do some quick do some math on which size I should be knitting, or whatever. Seems like it's a great tool. She was raving about it. She says it's a game changer. So I said, let's give it a shot, because I don't know about you, but that is one of the things that I find challenging, is laying down, especially if it's a sock or something that is kind of cumbersome to deal with, to sort of like get it pinned or whatever and count across. I always lose the row I'm on, or am I counting like the V's or these? So I thought that was a great way you could just line up a little bit and get a quick idea. So, but I did find she had a ton of sock yarn and some fun self-striping sock yarn, and I'd never seen this before, which is it's called Summer Socks by Landa Nord, which is a new brand for me. So there you go, and you can see that it's like very irregular striping pattern, so I thought that was also kind of fun. Actually, it would be that yarn for this zigzag scarf I'm working on, but it's cotton. It's cotton and nylon. So which I've never seen like a cotton and nylon yarn sock yarn before. So it's 88% cotton, 12% nylon. This is color 15. But I thought that was fun, and I don't know when it's going to get done, but I thought it might be fun to try cotton socks for summer. Although, quite frankly, I like wearing my wool socks. Wool is very breathable, insulating both cold and warm. And then the owner of the store gave us those little bags, which were adorable. And I posted a picture of the five of us with our, holding up our bags and tagged the yarn store in there. And I guess a number of folks who were in Seattle for the weekend saw them and ended up going into the store and asking them about the bags. So, hopefully she was able to sell some bags and some yarn as a result of that. But I thought that was pretty funny. So that evening after we had lunch, we kind of went back to the hotel for a second just to rest up. But I was doing my meetup with Professor Nicole from Professor Pearl podcast. She and I, for the second year, were sort of teaming up to do like a little meet up at a bar not too far from the convention center, kind of the evening before everyone, went to the marketplace. Friday at Flock, there are some classes, but the marketplace runs Saturday and Sunday. So we went again to this bar that's very close, about a 10-minute walk if you're a slow walker from the convention center, and they have like this mezzanine level, so we kind of set up there. Bar was super awesome in terms of dealing with them and like letting us just kind of show up and take over that space and giving assigning one of the servers specifically for that area, which worked out really, really well. We had about, I would say, 35 to 40 people kind of come and go. Some of the people who were vending at the show had said, "Oh, I'm going to come," but I knew that was going to be tough. Oh my God, the dog is now twitching and probably going to knock over the tripod. Oh, see, there it was. Maybe I should wake her up here, Julieta. Okay, there you go. She was asleep and like twitching, and her legs are like right around the thing, but. Anyway, we'll see how this works. So I knew that some of those vendors were going to be exhausted by the time they set up their booths and didn't show up. But we did have a few folks. Steph from Three Fates Yarn came by, and Sarah from Sea Change Fibers briefly stopped by as well. There was also in terms of designers. Fatima Hines, who I'd never met, so Disturbing the Fleece was there, and it was super cool to finally get to meet her, hang out. We had a great conversation. Her friend, who is Tump Duck, I'll post it down below, was also there. New to me designer, although I knew her like logo, but does some really cool, innovative designs as well. Other dyers, Laura from Always Be Kind Yarn stopped by with Arminda. So they are the Kindful Knitting podcast together, based also up there in the Pacific Northwest. Laura is a longtime friend, one of the early dyers who like chipped in on one of my, actually a couple of them, I think at this point. Knit-alongs when I was raising money for AIDS Life Cycle. Amazing self-striping yarn dyer, everything rainbow, just full bright happy colors. So, and she and Arminda do a podcast up there. Also, she came with her friend Mo, who I met last year, and they have opened up a local yarn store up there, which is really cool. So that was fun. It was a good group, people from all over the country. I met some folks from Fort Worth, Texas, and North Carolina. Someone else from here in the LA area. I think there were some folks from Utah as well. So it was Reno. Jared brought his whole crew from Reno, which was really cool. So it was a fun afternoon. Early evening, we had Nicole and I forgot Melissa. Melissa from Stitches Be Slippin' was there with Nicole, and it was really cool to get to spend more time with those two. Are hysterical, and we had a fun time there at the event. But I was kind of bopping around talking to everyone. But later, later that evening, we caught up with them for a quick drink at the hotel and just lots of laughs. So those two were a ton of fun to hang out with. But Nicole and I had been talking when we were sort of like checking in and saying, oh, do you want to do this thing again? Yes, we want to do this thing. And I said, oh, I'm doing this meetup thing here in LA as part of the Knit Stars thing that they're doing. And one of the things we're doing is this stitch marker swap. That might be something fun to do at this event. And we kind of mentioned it and then finished our Zoom call and, we started planning the event and called the bar and all that stuff. And then like a week or so ago, she reached out and said, oh, we had talked about doing a stitch marker swap. Do you still want to do that? And I said, oh yeah, I didn't put it in the Evite, but I can always just go back and add it and it'll send out an update to anyone who is RSVP'd and then it'll be there for folks who see it. So I did that. And, I said, we're going to do a stitch marker swap, bring a cute stitch marker. We'll throw them all in a bag and then we'll take turns picking them out. Well, Nicole had a completely different idea of what I meant by a stitch marker swap. Totally my fault for not explaining what I had in mind. And so she spent like a couple of days like making dozens of little stitch markers that then she was giving to everyone. And then, thought we were all going to bring like handmade stitch markers and swap them, which is a really, really cool idea, but totally different than what I had in mind. So we had a good laugh about that. Sorry, Julieta. And we did both. Everyone threw stitch markers into the bag. We drew those out. I had brought plenty of extras so folks who hadn't brought them could still draw one out of the grab bag, and I was able to get rid of a few extra stitch markers from my gigantic collection. And then Nicole had this like tray full of these super cute like sea animals and like these little bows, stitch markers, and everyone was able to take one of those as well. So it was a great evening. So thank you all who came out. I apologize that I didn't have a chance to like sit down and chat with each and every one of you individually. As I was passing around the hat to draw the stitch markers, I tried to say hello to everyone and find out a little bit about where they were from. But it was cool because people came with their friends and then just kind of found a little corner, and some people met new people, but some people just hang out with the folks that came, and it was a really fun evening. The next morning we got up and that evening we went down to the Chinatown International District of Seattle and had a really amazing Filipino meal at a restaurant called Kilig, Kilig. Really, really good. Fatima and her friend joined us as well, and so it was like Lynn and Stuart and I went. Shannon had to get back home. And had a really great evening. And then, as I mentioned, Lynn and I were in the same hotel as Nicole and Melissa. And so we went up and had a drink with them and had an Andrea Mowry encounter in the elevator. So we were, Nicole was like, oh, come up to her room. She had brought this like nice bottle of sparkling wine from a local to her, and she was like, it's one of my favorites, and we'll toast or whatever. And I was like, well, you're in a different elevator bank at the hotel than we are, so we're not going to be able to get up to your floor. And she's like, oh, I've got to get some ice. The ice machines are on this lower floor, so why don't we meet there, and then I'll bring you up to the room. So we get there and we hop up the elevator, and there's Nicole like in her pajamas with the ice bucket. And so we jump back on the elevator, and then like this couple who are obviously not flock people, looks like they're coming from like a wedding or some sort of banquet or something. So she's like in a formal dress, he's like in a suit. And so, there's Nicole in her pajamas, and like we're, just giggling, and the three of us. And then right before the door closes, Andrea Mowry walks in, also with an ice bucket. And so I recognized her immediately, and the doors closed, and Nicole was like, well, hello, Andrea Mowry. And she sort of like turns around, and then she smiles, and she's like, oh, hi, are you guys here for Flock? And we're like, no, we just randomly recognized you. But I was wearing my knit t-shirt. She said, "Oh, I like your t-shirt." And then we chatted for a second about the ooey gooey and that Lynn was going to be working on the ooey gooey. And it was just a funny little, moment, but I'll never forget. Well, hello, Andrea Mowry. So we did that, and then we got up the next morning. The thing doesn't open until 10, the marketplace. And so we grabbed some breakfast, did some knitting in the lobby of the hotel, and then headed over there. And it's extremely well organized. If you've not been to Flock, I highly recommend it. If you're on the West Coast and can swing it, if you're local, absolutely. It's extremely well organized, extremely thoughtfully curated. Seems to be getting better and better each year. It's a beautiful space, open, lots of natural light. The aisles are wide. I mean, the booths can get cramped depending on what size of booth it is, and just the number of people. I have no idea what the attendance is, but when we showed up at about little before 10 into the lobby, there was this gigantic line that snaked every which way but loose through that whole lobby. It moved very quickly. They scan your ticket, you're in. The first 2 hours of the marketplace on Saturday are mask only. So I thought that was great for folks who need to be in a masked environment to participate. It provides some accessibility. Although I will say, I think there was a great sigh of relief for a lot of folks when the mask is over, because it's been so long since I've had to wear a mask for 2 hours straight. We got used to it, but it is not the most pleasant experience. But anyway, I'm glad that they do it for folks that need that to be able to hang out there. So we decided that we were going to do an initial pass through, and then recirculate to do our serious shopping. So last year, I should have brought it out here, but here's a picture of it, and here's a picture of me in it. Sorry, over here. Last year, the folks from my knitting group that went, some of us decided, we go to these yarn shows, and I think this happens to a lot of folks, is like you get all caught up, you see this beautiful single skein. If you don't have a plan going in, and you see this beautiful single skein, you grab that, and then you find, oh my gosh, there's another one, and you grab that. Or you have one of your friends who's a dyer, and you're like, oh, I want to help support them, and so I buy these, and you end up with these, bunch of single skeins that then you're never entirely sure what to do with. And they go into Destash, and yes, you can, you use them for projects down the road, but speaking for myself only, but it seemed to resonate with the folks I was with last year that, we just don't need, and some of us are bursting at the seams in terms of our capacity for more stash. So we decided what we would do last year was to do minis. So last year, Flock was like the year of the mini. Like, seems like every booth had like mini baskets and tons of minis. I don't think there was many this year, but and we decided we were going to make this. We had actually before the show, we had kind of gone through and we're talking about single skein projects, and we found this, and we're like, oh, that'll be fun. Like, make the bubble bandana out of minis that you got from Flock, and it'll be like a little souvenir scarf that you have. So I actually wore it all day on Saturday, and so we decided to do something similar this year. Lynn, I think, was the one who found it, and we ended up ultimately sticking with it. Although it did inspire me to go start to put together a Ravelry bundle of mini skein projects. I will link that down below. There already is one there for Advents, but I was looking for things that were like 5 to 10 minis. But we ultimately landed on a pattern called Butterfly Field by Telly Belly Knit, so Stephanie Lofton. And it is a single skein main color and then 10 minis. Although you could probably do up to, I think it's like 16 or 17, because the way that it works is here's the picture of it. and you can, she's done it in the sample as sort of a fade, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you start going back down. I think it's like, you repeat 5 or 6 more down the road, on the back end. And so we decided we were going to do that. And so our first pass was one to kind of see who had minis, and then I needed to get a single skein to work from. So we started walking through, and that was the main goal. As I mentioned last episode, I kind of had in my mind also some non 100% non-wool yarn or blends to make summer t-shirts out of, and I had a couple of things in mind. So just in terms, and I'm sure I'm going to forget some folks here, but so on that first pass, the very first booth I went into was Jean at Junie and Sai, and I apologize that I always call it Junie and C, but this gets me to the giveaway. So I was going to do this before, but it just came to my mind. I mentioned it because, and she actually mentioned it to me when I was in the booth. She was like, "Oh, do you have that skein of that first year of Flock yarn?" This was her show color from the original Flock. Well, now we're focusing this week. Last time we didn't. So this is the Junie and Sai, and I always call it Junie and C, but apparently it has to do with a mountain called Sai. Maybe there's a Mount Junie and a Mount Sai. And this is the 2023 Pump Up the Volume, was her Flock exclusive. And I said, I do have it, and I'm actually using it for a giveaway on my next episode. And so congratulations to Jenny McCabe. You have won this. It's not green, but there is some green in it. I know you love green. So I will get this to you. I'll probably put it in the mail, even though I think I'm going to see you in a couple months at LA or SoCal Fiber Fair. And while we're on the giveaway bandwagon, whatever we are, I'm going to do another one just because I think I'm just going to keep doing them until I get my prize pile down to a reasonable size. So this episode's giveaway is this beautiful skein, and it looks like, I'm going to pop it open here. I think this would actually be good for a assigned pooling, yeah? That seems right. Or maybe not assigned pooling, but maybe planned pooling. I think that would be a good planned pooling yarn. This is worsted weight. It is from Fuzzy Whatnots. It is called Wintry Mix. So very, very dark gray through gray to kind of turquoise blue would be a great yarn to make up a charity hat, I think, although it may not be. No, it's superwash, so perfect. So if you would like to be in the mix, the wintry mix, for this skein of yarn, why don't you use the word mix in a comment down below, and I will draw from those comments, and we'll give this away next time. So yes, I saw Junie and Sai first, and then started walking the booth, the floor, and was taking pictures along the way to try to find my main skein, and then I was going to go back and do once I decided to pick that and start doing the mini thing. So we also saw Tracy from Happy Studios, Happy Creations, who makes the little yarn caddies that I carry around when I go walking. Shayla from Black Pearl Magic, who is doing some really cool, she's extremely well known, and rightly so, for her vinyl bags, all the bright colors, all the rainbows, all the sparkles, but she has started to mix in some fabric as well, which they were really cool. Some mixing the vinyl and the fabric, so you get like a vinyl layer or vinyl kind of over fabric, and then she did some but really, really cool, fun, bright, vibrant prints of just fabric as well. Ross from Twisted Ambition, his booth was amazing, and I got to meet his husband. I think Scott is his name. So this was their first flock, which is really cool. And got some minis there. I'll talk about those in a minute. Met my friend for the first time, Wendy Bloom, who's here in LA, or in the LA area like me, but we have never met in person just because we live so far apart. But she and I were part of the group that organized the Makers for Kamala fundraiser last year for the election. So I got to meet her in person, which was awesome. Maggie and Emily from Yarnaceous and Fangirl Fibers as well, and Jamie from Pacific Knit Co. They had their doodle bar set up, which is just every time they bring it together. One, it's always packed with people, but they always have like new stuff going on. So they had some really fun new doodle packs, which we'll talk about. New yarns, tons of minis, just a lot of stuff in the booth there. And every time I walked by there, including when I bought stuff there, the line was out the booth. And so congrats to Jamie and Emily and Maggie, because that continues to be such a huge success for them. Let's see. I got to meet Susie from Fiber MacGyver. I'll show you because it doesn't really count as a purchase. Oh, here it is. But Emily, the botanical knitter, who we ran into at the breakfast line at the hotel, she was working in the Fiber MacGyver booth. If you're not familiar, Susie has this trailer that she calls Madge that I saw it at Rhinebeck. Well, it was at the show that shall not be named, but the one before Rhinebeck a couple years ago that was a disaster. And she has this really cute trailer that she pulls in and has all her yarn in it. And here's a little sticker. She calls it Madge, and this is the Madge badge, but she also has made these little stitch stoppers. So she had a little kind of gift pack, a little barber cord in there. So she handed me that. So that was really sweet, beautiful yarn as well. We saw Ava from Seismic Yarn, as always, and her family, which is fantastic. She had a really beautiful special colorway for flock called just Flock It or something like that. I think that was what it was. And she was sharing, I don't know if they were sharing a booth, but they were neighbors with Christine from Teal Torch Knits. And her yarn is absolutely, if you are into brights and neons, Seismic sort of kicked off that game with the black lights and everything. But Christine has fantastic, really bright, I think her advent is called like Girly Pop or something, and it's all these really fun, bright colors. But she was sharing a booth with someone who was new to me, and that is Leanna. Let me double check. Yes, Leanna, and it's Waifu Yarns. K-pop influence. She had a K-pop person, I don't know which one it is, but this life-size figure wearing a shawl in the booth. Really fun, again, bright, vibrant, poppy colors. So that was really cool. Crafty Little Fox, who makes the most amazing bags. I was carrying around my Seattle bag from last year. She had her new Flock exclusive, or Seattle exclusive, and has started to do some bags in. She told us the name of the material, but it's like puffy coat material. Like it's like a ripstop nylon, but it's like, I think, quilted, or maybe it wasn't quilted, but it has like some batting or something. So it's kind of puffy, but it's like, stain resistant. So you can just like wipe it off if for some reason it gets wet. She was saying that you can, folks have used it when they're like kayaking and wanting to knit with their kayak because it's, splash resistant. And she, every flock that I've been to, she has, like, by the time we get to her booth in the afternoon or whenever, she's almost sold out of everything that she brought in one day. In fact, the first flock I went to, I was working helping Caitlin from Porter Woolco in her booth, and they had a Friday night session of the thing, and I saw a bag that I really wanted, and so like before the thing even opened, I like ran over to her booth and like snagged it and snagged the bag for someone else that year, because she always sells out because her bags are amazing, and she has such cute prints. So it was good to see her. Got to see Sarah again from from Sea Change Fiber. We'll show you what I got there, as well as what I got from Geraldine and Marie, their first flock from the Wandering Flock. They're I could barely get into her booth every time I walked by. So that was really fun that they were having such a great show. And we chatted, and hopefully maybe one of these times when I'm in New York on a business trip, I can swing out to see their new studio in I assume it's still out in East Williamsburg somewhere. I saw Angeline from Woolly Wildflower. She changed her name. Yes, Woolly Wildflower X Alchemy Arts, I think was what it was called. She was sitting there spinning, and her stuff looked good. She has candles and fiber and yarn. And then new to me, although she said she had met me at last year's meetup, but she didn't introduce herself, is Heather from So Happy Jane. Really, really cute stuff. I have some stuff from her as well. Ran into Jada Woo, Jess from Jada Woo, Dawn from Dawn Catherine Studios. Met a new to me dyer that does natural dyeing on non-superwash yarn called Wool and Palette. Really, really nice. Her name's Emily, and we went to her booth, and she had all of the botanicals and herbs and whatever it is, the plants that she uses to dye her yarn, but really rich, saturated colors, which is not something I always associate with natural dyeing. And she had, not surprising anyone, not surprising when you see what I ended up with, a really great 2 different denims, like a light denim, although it was still pretty dark, and then a very, very dark denim navy blue. I think it was on a couple of different yarn bases. And I have in my head, I have multiple quantities of navy blue, sweater quantities of navy blue yarn to make various sweaters for myself, cardigans and pullovers and whatnot. And I do need to work through some of that. I think with next episode I'm going to talk about maybe fall knitting projects, and hopefully one of those is there. So I was very tempted to figure out a sweater quantity to do a non-superwash wool, because I would like to start doing more there. But I held back and said, listen, I got to get through a couple of these sweater quantities before I can add more to that bin, which is already bursting at the seams. But really, really nice stuff. It's called Wool and Palette, if I didn't mention that before. And then people who weren't vending that we ran into, Casey from Casey Knits, always good to get a hug from Casey, and Jerry, who is here on YouTube as the Blue Knitter. We briefly ran into her and totally forgot to get a picture, which is just bad on my part. Ran into Sharon a couple of times. She is a Zydeco girl, and some number 61 maybe over on Instagram. So always great to see her. And then 2 new folks to me just sort of stopped me and said they just found the podcast and they enjoyed it, and it was really nice and sort of touching. That they stopped and said they like the Craftivism stuff, and that is Megan, who is Cat Knits, I think, on Instagram, and Chelsea, who is here on YouTube as, oh my gosh, True Lane. I was going to say Everlane. I was like, no, that's like the people who make t-shirts. So True Lane. So she has a podcast and as well as a blog, but she's True Lane here on YouTube. So go check it out. They're very, very sweet. Thank you guys for stopping me. Thank you to everyone who stopped and said hello. I saw Michael from Peace for Peace Podcasting and Fiber Hustle. That Fiber Hustle booth, I know Aaron was on that. They sold out a bunch of stuff that first day, but all of the new album art inspired yarn that Aaron is dyeing and all of the new patterns in the chip baskets were phenomenal. And I was really, really tempted. If you haven't seen the floral pattern inspired by the Prince Purple Rain album art on the flip backside of it, that Chip made the baskets out of. I was really tempted. I have 2, including one you're going to see here in a minute, 2 chip baskets already, the larger size ones. But I was really tempted to get one of the little smaller ones, but didn't do that. But their booth was popping. I went back late in the day because we'd forgotten to take a picture, and you got a picture, and it was like, we've sold out of this yarn and this yarn. We run out of our little, like, the things they were giving away. I think were like stitch stoppers or something like that. So kudos to Chip and Aaron for putting together a great booth. Saw, as I mentioned, Max and Vincent from Les Garçons as well. I think that's pretty much, that's a lot, but I think that's pretty much it in terms of the folks that we ran into. But there were just a ton of people walking around, and that was only one day. I sort of late that day, I was like, I had to stop and like sit down, and I was like, oh, this is probably good. I probably don't need to come another day, because I did the shopping I needed to do, probably about slightly more than I was expecting, but manageable. And then I was like, if I come on Sunday, I'm just going to get tempted to buy more yarn. But at the same time, I kind of wish I'd been able to be a little slower, because I did at a certain point, I was in pursuit of 10 minis, and I did feel like at a certain point I was like sprinting around just trying to find my minis. And maybe having a second day, I would have been able to stop and like spend a little more time chatting with folks. So let's talk about the haul. It's not much of a haul, I would say, compared to things that have happened in the past. But let's talk about what I got. I mentioned already what I got at Acorn Street. So at Flock, let's go through the single skeins stuff first, and then we'll do the Flock souvenir project that I think 3 or 4 of us are going to be working on. Oh, before I do that, I have it here, and this was not a purchase, but I mentioned in the Yarnaceous and Fangirl Fiber Doodle Bar booth with Pacific Knit Co. that they had a lot of fun new stuff. So Emily from Fangirl Fiber had a Pedro Pascal inspired yarn, and there was some little thing that it said, like, it may have been this exact same, that said something about like easily distracted by Pedro Pascal and yarn. And Maggie from Yarnaceous Fiber, who not everything, but much of what she does is sort of dinosaur themed and very into Jurassic Park franchise. And so from the new Jurassic World or Jurassic Reborn or whatever the new one is this summer with Jonathan Bailey and his slutty little glasses, she had a yarn, a Jonathan Bailey inspired yarn, and she had these little stitch markers that were attached to them. So she gave me one that says, I hope you can read this, easily distracted by sexy little glasses and yarn. She changed the slutty to sexy, but I thought that was very funny. So I guess I did walk away with a stitch marker. I got rid of a bunch and ended up with one. So on net, not so bad. So we'll talk about the single skeins, and then we'll get into the butterfly field project and the minis that are going to be in the mini and the main color that did that. So first thing, I mentioned Fiber Hustle, and this is right here. I was just looking through the booth, and there was a skein there was a Madonna Material Girl inspired skein that was in the running for my single skein for the shawl. So it's kind of creamy white with like grays and turquoise. And so that was in the running. By the time I came back around, and I'd already made my decision anyway, it had been sold out. But I'd spotted this yarn earlier in the day and wanted to go back and get it. He had it knitted up in a sample, and I just loved the way that the sock tube looked, and I wanted to get socks made out of it. So here it is. This is Fiber Hustle. And the colorway it's not one of his album ones, but it's called Match on Concrete. So it's just this like medium gray with these kind of rust and gold speckles throughout on top of a cream. And I love it when the dyers who do a lot of like variegateds and speckleds knit up swatches, either sock tubes or crochet. I saw someone that had done both. I swear it makes me want to buy more of the yarn, because when I see this, I think it's going to have a lot of the white in it, but when it was knit up, it was really much more uniformly gray with just little like pops. So it just really depends on how the hank is wound. And for me, it is always hard to visualize these things. So I love it when folks just have a little swatch knit up, because especially for variegated and speckled things that I would be like, oh, that's pretty, but I don't know what it's going to look like. And next thing you know, I'm like, oh, I need to have a pair of socks in that colorway. So Concrete Unmatched by Fiber Hustle, love that. The other single skein that I bought, so I was planning to not buy any, and I only walked out with two, so I think that's fine. And technically, we're not even gonna count this one because it's not really gonna be for me. I don't know that I've mentioned here. I think I have, because we talked about going to see that with the LA Phil. My husband is obsessed with the movie Jaws. It is one of his favorite movies of all time. There are a handful of movies that he watches at least once a year. Jaws is one of them. I think we are now on viewing number 3 of it so far this year, including when we went to go see it live with the Philharmonic. It's the 50th anniversary of Jaws. It is coming in IMAX. I know we're going to go see it again. We have watched several documentaries on the making of Jaws this summer, so he's fully into Jaws, and it's sitting over there, and I don't have it. But Lynn, there was a film festival where she lives, and one of the things they were doing was screening one of the new documentaries. I think it's called Jaws at 50, which we've watched, and it's really, really good if you haven't seen it. But the whole cover of the program from this film festival is kind of the original movie poster of Jaws, and so she brought a copy of it because she knew that he was obsessed. Then walking through the show, I saw that same image. It's the one with the shark coming up and this woman swimming across the top. And a new dyer to me called Ocean Fibers, out of Oregon, out of Astoria, Oregon. Ocean is spelled O with a long O sign over it, S-H-E-N. Or maybe I know it's Ocean, because that's how at least I was taught the phonetic signs. And they had that image, and they had dyed up a yarn that they were calling Jaws 50th Anniversary Edition. And so here it is. And this, again, it's the way that this is wrapped, because I was like, oh, that there is olive and the sort of that murky color in the poster, and these colors in there, but there's more blue in this yarn than you're seeing here. I thought I popped some out, but there's kind of in there, there's more of this sort of blue and gray color. It does knit up, and it's beautiful. I don't know that I would have initially right away said oh, Jaws, but because it does come, the swatch was pretty olive, but my husband's always saying, well, you knit all these socks for yourself, why don't you ever knit socks for me? And I always say, well, you know how to knit, because he did learn during the pandemic. But I said, even the yarn dyers have gotten on the Jaws at 50 craze. I'm going to buy this yarn, and you will finally get your pair of socks. You will have your Jaws socks, and this is on the Serena sock base, which is an MCN, so 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon. So they're going to be super cozy socks, and I'm hoping that because the colorways are right up my alley, and the swatch was really pretty, I'm hoping I can get maybe a pair of shorties out of it for myself after I make his socks. So those are the two. Those are the only two sort of spontaneous single skeins that I purchased. In terms of other stuff, non-yarn related stuff, I mentioned I was in the Doodle booth, and I got a couple of. She started doing these destination packs, so they're 10, 15. These are, I think, maybe each 13. Yeah, 13 doodles. So I got Dublin and I got Paris. So I thought that was fun. They were two places we've spent our last two vacations, and I am going to try to do. Thinking maybe I want to do one of the doodle projects. I do think I want to try some colorwork socks, and so maybe we'll do little Guinnesses or something around the edge of my socks. The other thing that I bought that was not yarn was some cards. So this is from a illustrator called A Little Sun, and she had a pack of birthday cards. Each one's different, so they aren't all these holy guacamole. But we have a little card file that we just keep because invariably I'll be like 2 days, before I need to send a card. I'm like, oh, it's so and so's birthday, and so it's always good to have some spare birthday cards on hand. At the Doodle, a couple other things at the Doodle Bar. So she has a new app, and I don't know what looks like it's a monthly subscription because there was a code to get 50% off your first month, but it has access to all of the base doodle patterns, 200 plus core seasonal colorwork charts, learn how to build a colorwork yarn palette, new techniques with the doodle knitting tutorials, and a social aspect to it. Well, it's called Doodle HQ, which I thought was cool. I'll have to check it out. I don't know that I need another subscription right away. But the other thing is she had, if you spent, I think $65 or something, you've got, there was a show exclusive set of, I think there were three, one that said pearl, one that said yarn, and one that said knit. And then they were Jamie was sweet and gave me one of her doodle bags. Very cool. Okay, so I mentioned that going into the show, one of the things that I was thinking about doing was based on my success and enjoying wearing my T-shirt that I knit up, which is in Fingering Weight Superwash Merino, that I wanted to try some blends or something that was not all wool or wool nylon, and that specifically I was looking maybe for something that had some linen in it. So I knew that Sarah at Sea Change Fibers had some really cool bases, and I thought I had remembered when I was at the Yarn Crawl here in LA and she had a trunk show, although she wasn't there, that there was one that had like silk and linen and wool in it. And so I went by, and indeed she did. So I got a t-shirts quantity of this, which is her Shoreline Sport, so sport weight, so a little bit heavier than the one I knit, which hopefully means it'll go a little bit faster, but I think is still a weight that is wearable for me. And this is in her Shoreline Sport, so it's 325 yards per 100 grams, and it's 50% merino Rambouillet blend, 25% silk, 25% linen. And when I was buying it, there's a woman who was was shopping at the same time. She was like, "Oh my gosh, that's my favorite base. It works up so well. It just gets softer and softer the more you wash it." And she pulled something out of her bag and like, "Here, feel this." And it's like linen. I think, from what I understand, I've never knit with it, but it's a little harsh in the beginning, but apparently it really ages well with washing and with wear. So I'm excited to maybe make this my next t-shirt. I think it's going to be a set and sleeve pieced garment. So I got that one, and I'd kind of decided at that point that was all I was going to do. Again, I have some other yarn from my Stitch Out Loud collection that I plan to make t-shirts out of. So I probably have 2 more sort of t-shirt plans. So that's 3. That seems like a lot, and who knows when they're all going to get done. Even though I knew, so I planned, once I bought that, I was like, okay, that's probably it. Even though I knew that Geraldine from Wandering Flock had her cotton lino yarn in the booth, even though I hadn't made it over there yet, and it's gotten huge response and great reviews, and I know she has a navy that I really, really like. So I popped in there and I said, I asked Marie, I was like, do you have it? And she's like, yes. And so I left and thought about it, and then I hadn't really said hi to Geraldine, so I went back over there, and then I saw it and I decided I was going to get it, and she said, oh, you should definitely get it. The skeins that we have here, she's like, we specially packed up the navy, because if you're familiar with Wandering Flock, most of her colorways are tend to be sort of on the pastels and sort of bright pastels side of things. But she's like, we purposely brought the packed it up here, and what we have here is basically all that's in the country. And I don't know if it's a tariff thing or sourcing thing, but it made it sound like, this may be it for a while. That there may be some issues with getting more Navy or something into the country. So I decided, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. And so I got this. So this is the Wandering Flock Navy in the cotton lino. It's not written on here, but it is sport weight 328 yards per 100 grams. And this is 35% organic cotton, 30% mulberry silk, 20% linen, and 15% baby alpaca. So it's really soft, and I'm really interested to. I mean, it feels like a cotton yarn, but you can tell that the alpaca is giving it that softness. And I'm just assuming, that with that much silk in there, it's going to be very drapey, and then that the linen is going to give it that sort of patinaing over time, that sort of softening over time. So again, I'm really excited. I think I'm going to do the other one first, but the t-shirts didn't take a ton of time. It's not like knitting a full sweater, because sleeve island is very, very short. So that was that. So I got my 2 t-shirt quantities, even though I was really kind of only planning one. And then the only other thing that I shopped for and bought was for our Butterfly Field group project. I don't know when that's going to start. I know a couple of us were like, it can't start this month. I've got 2 deadlines, which I'll talk about here in a second. And those have got to get finished before I could even think about it. And then, so I thought, maybe end of September I could start. But then I'm like, Stephen West's Mystery Knit-Along is coming up. Do I really want to have 2 shawls started at the same time that I have all these other plans for the fall? So in this same old situation, which is too many projects I want to get started and too little time to try to get them all done. Anyway, I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be very pretty. I'm happy with my choices in terms of both the main color and the contrasting colors. So I went back to almost the very first shop that I went into, or booth that I went into, which was So Happy Jane. Again, a new to me dyer. She said this was her second or third time at Flock, and that we had met at my meetup, but that she didn't introduce herself as a dyer. So got chatting with her, and this was one of the first skeins that I saw, and I thought it would be perfect because, so it's from her 100 Acre Wood collection, which was something she did this year, and there was only, it was a pre-order kind of thing, and so I'm glad that I found it, because I don't think she keeps this in her stock regularly, so these must have just been extras. So it's, based on the Winnie the Pooh characters and story. It's on her Joyful Fingering base, which is 459 yards for 100 gram, and it's 75% superwash merino, 24% recycled nylon, and I guess 1% magic. I don't know. There's 1% not in there. But this is, the colorway is called Expedition, I think, which has to do with a map and a treasure hunt or something in the Winnie the Pooh stories. Anyway, it's this beautiful cream base, and the colors are kind of going to get blown out here because of all the light, but it's kind of this cream base with, I would say, some very pale olivey green undertones and variegation in there. And then on top of that, there are blue and brown, and in some places where that's kind of broken a little bit, the brown speckles become more golden and rusty, I would say. And then, the blues kind of get into grays as well. So I thought that was a good palette to play with, as my sister said. I said, it's olives and blues and grays, and she's like, all the colors of the Gary rainbow, and I said, that is right. since those are the colors that I tend to wear most of all. But I think that this sort of pale green base behind it is also very nice because it kind of pulls in the blues a bit, allows you to play with, you know, some olives and goes well with the grays and the browns. So I think it's going to be really, really lovely. And so from that, I don't know that it's not really going to be a fade because I didn't try to do all blues, but there's a lot of blues in there in the mix. But here's what I've got. I ended up with 11 minis, so I think one of them is going to fall out. And I do have some minis in stash that I could blend in there if I need to. But I'm going to go in the order that I kind of have thought that they're going to go into. And so it's first started with this one from Twisted Ambitions. So this is Smoke. Again, all of these I think are, there's one that may have some yak in it. No, maybe not. I think they're all Superwash Merino nylon blends. So this is Smoke from Twisted Ambitions. And then from Serial Dyer, this is Summer Jam. Moving into Arctic from Twisted Ambition. And then also from Serial Dyer, North Sea. So yeah, sometimes I picked up a couple from people when I was like, "Ooh, that's gonna be nice. That's gonna be nice. We'll figure it all out on later if I end up with too many." Then from Yarnaceous, this is Midnight. So it's kind of a dark teal. Let's see how I can do this. I'm gonna run out of hand space here. And then from Fangirl Fiber, this really dark navy called Siren Song. Then I go a dark gray. This one is from, and I need to label this. This is from Scranton Stitcher. So this dark gray from the navy to the dark gray. Then from Three Fates Yarn, from Steph, this is like an olive with some like tonality to it. So it kind of gets into a very dark gray in places. And from there, going into another serial knitter with a brown, which is called Espresso Balancing. We love that. This one is from Capaluna. I can't remember the colorway name, but so kind of more of a rusty golden brown. And then the last one I got, also from Scranton Stitcher, is this more kind of camely brown. And I think if one drops out, I think it's going to probably be that one. So that's kind of the order, you know, that I have them in. So starting with this sort of like very pale gray, blue gray, and then transitioning to the more brown end of things on top of this yarn. So I think it's gonna be great. When it gets started, who knows? When it gets finished, who even knows more? Because undoubtedly there will be a mystery knit along or something that I've decided, I need to do. I have another pair of socks and I want to knit for someone. So things will pop up and it gets finished when it gets finished. So that is it on the haul from Flock. Thank you everyone who showed up to the meetup. Thank you everyone who came up to say hey in the marketplace. I don't know if I'm going to make it back next year. I kind of feel like either a break from anything that's not local in terms of yarn festivals, or maybe trying something new. I keep hearing great things about Lambstown. That's not as far as Seattle, and maybe could make a little road trip out of it for me and the husband and even potentially the dog. So maybe that's in the mix. I don't know. We shall see. Anything could happen. The world could change so much in the next year that we're not traveling anymore. So who knows? Let's quickly get through the projects. There are only two that have had any work done on them. The one I took to with me, and that is the focus right now for me, is my zigzag scarf. So this is where we are. I'm going to scroll up here. The pattern is called the Zigzag Scarf, free pattern on Ravelry. Really straightforward, simple, 12 stitch repeat. I always forget who did it, but it will be linked down below. This marker, this Stitch Progress Keeper, is where I was last podcast. So I don't know, it was probably about a third of the way, maybe less. Probably more like 25% of the way where it's going to be. If you recall, I had probably done about that much more and had to rip back because I had flipped the sides. So I did that, started again, and then this stitch marker, which is the original Flock stitch marker from 2023 from Hello Lavender, who I missed seeing at Flock this year. She wasn't there. Also, I was expecting to see Treehouse Knits, and she wasn't there, as well as Red Stag. So a few folks that I was hoping to see that either canceled or I was mistaken in whether they're going to be there. So that was kind of a bummer. But anyway, that is where I started for Flock weekend, and that is how much I have done from the weekend until last night. I finished up, so I'll move that stitch marker. So I was measuring it today against another scarf. I think that I'm about 2/3 of the way done. This is all being done in Lang yarns, Mille Colori Baby, 2 different colorways that have numbers, and you alternate, every other row. So that's how you get this sort of mixing, and because they change colors at a different rate, you very rarely get sort of the same kind of mixing and matching. I mean, you're getting some of this blue and yellow here, and then you get it here, and then a little bit more here. But it's pretty variable, which is the cool thing about it. This was the pattern of the project I was referencing when I was talking about that sock yarn that has the highly variable striping pattern. Would be something like that would be perfect for this pattern, because that's how you're going to get all the mixing in there. So that's that. I hope to make about that much more progress in the next week or so. That's going to be all my social knitting, and any took it to the Hollywood Bowl last week. I don't think we have anything coming up there this week. I do have potentially, I'm not sure if I'm going to go yet, 4 of the local yarn stores here in LA are teaming up to plan a knit movie night. So they booked a theater in Hollywood, and they're screening Pretty in Pink, which would be cool because I don't think I've seen that since I was like a teenager. And what they do, you buy tickets to the store, but they basically just dim the lights. They don't turn them all the way off, so there's still enough light to work. And I assume that you could probably also bring your neck lamps if you wanted. And no food or drink, because who wants to get popcorn grease all over their project in the theater, but they'll have snacks beforehand. So I'm thinking about going. I'm checking to see if my local, any of the folks from my local groups are going to go down to there. It's a bit of a drive to get into town from where we live, but it's like late afternoon on a Sunday, so the traffic shouldn't be terrible, and it shouldn't be so late when I come back. So we'll see. But if I do, that's the project that's coming. The other project is my Marled Magic from Stephen West, living in one of my chip bags from, I think, very early in chip bag production. This one is the chip basket, I should say, is from Fiber Hustle. And this is my Marled Magic by Stephen West. I am down to the final section, so it is pretty large. I'll see if I can scooch back a bit and show you where we are. So, that's the right side. So the second to last section was this pink and orange, where I'm holding it right now, that runs along, one long edge, Pearl Ridge bumps, and as I mentioned last time, the friend that I'm making this for is an artist and loves big, bold, vibrant colors, and so that's what I'm trying to achieve here. Those same 2 yarns I'm going to be using on the final section, which is the same, almost exactly the same in terms of the stitch pattern, and it's going to run along the other long edge. It's caught up on a cord here, so you can't see it. Ooh, and I'm about to lose stitches. Also great. There's the stitch marker, sorry. So I've just got to do another section almost exactly the same size as this. It moved pretty quickly, even though because you're doing short rows to create the wedge shape, so each row gets progressively shorter, even though it's pretty long to start with. It moves pretty quickly because I think you lose 5 stitches each 2 rows, so it'll move pretty quickly. This will probably at some point in the next week or so take over my TV knitting. The final 2 colors, which are here, are the bottom one with the pink and the bright pink and the orange is Punk Rock Unicorn, and the top is a Knit Picks. I keep forgetting to write it down. I think it's Stroll. Those are the only 2 colors in the whole thing that were not scraps. I just wanted, knowing that she loves orange, and there's little bits of orange kind of throughout this, that I thought having the 2 sections, the 2 big sections that kind of are on the border, predominantly orange, although this reads pretty pink as well, but would pull it together, and then the whole thing is going to be bordered in these 2 scraps, which is it's a Knitting Tree LA orange, and no idea who's orange. Madeline Tosh, I think that's from a Fatima Hines Cal I did for someone once upon a time. I think it's a Madeline Tosh lace weight mohair blend, and that I-cord goes all the way around it. So both of these projects are hopefully going to get done by mid-September. I'm hoping to deliver those by hand to the 2 recipients when I on a work trip to New York in the end of September, and then we can move on to some new stuff. Finish the 1 pair of socks I have going for myself, and then regroup and figure out what's going on for the fall. So went a little long. Apologize for that, but I loved Flock, and I love talking about Flock. If you have not been, you should definitely check it out. Don't forget to enter in the giveaway using the word mix in your comment, and I will give away this skein of Fuzzy Whatnots worsted next podcast. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your week to spend it with me. I hope you are well. Stay well. Make something fantastic. I will see you again in probably about 2 weeks' time. And I think maybe that episode I will focus on fall knitting plans and maybe a look back at my initial intentions for this year and see how well I'm keeping up with those. So have a great couple of weeks. Take care. See you soon.